Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about gold, silver, and today's Federal Reserve announcement. Stick around until the end where we'll look at the gold and silver charts and I'll share what I've been doing in these markets. Before we begin, none of this is financial advice, as I am not a financial advisor. Creating or updating a portfolio management strategy should never be taken lightly, and without the assistance of an advisor who is familiar with your personal circumstance. With that in mind, let's dive in. Let's start with the basics. Today, Federal Reserve officials announced that inflation has been cooling recently, but remains above their target of 2%. Here are the quick takeaways to explain what this means for gold and silver stackers. Then, we'll take a look at the charts. Inflation has eased but is still high, leading the Fed to predict only one interest rate cut this year, down from a previous forecast of 3. The economy is growing steadily, with strong hiring and modest progress towards the Fed's 2% inflation target. The key interest rate remains at 5.3%. The Fed's rate cuts are dependent on future economic data, meaning more good news on inflation is needed. High interest rates continue to affect loans and mortgages, making borrowing more expensive. Stock and metal prices rose, and bond yields fell after the latest inflation data, despite fewer rate cuts than expected. Finally, the Fed is calling for steady economic growth and stable unemployment rates over the next few years. So, what does all of this mean for precious metals? Well, it means that nothing has meaningfully changed since the last Fed statement. Uncertainty is the rule of the day, and gold and silver are tailor-made for uncertainty. This means safe haven assets continue to be a safe place to be, as there is still inflation out there to hedge against. Like it or not, we're dependent on the data we'll see in the coming months. Some may disagree, but it sure does feel like we're maintaining what I see as a Goldilocks economy. Nothing is great and everyone is unhappy. This means conditions are neither too hot nor too cold. Inflation has fallen a considerable amount, and it doesn't seem like we're headed immediately into a recession. We continue to see moderate economic growth, moderating inflation, and pretty much full employment. All of this together suggests we're sitting on a bit of a knife's edge, and as such, gold and silver continue to perform alongside, and in many cases better, than other risk assets. Now we'll quickly look at the charts. As we've been watching, gold has made a substantial move of over $500 since January. If you think about what we just covered, it makes sense that we've been looking at chop for the last 3 months. I'm still looking for gold to meander a bit here and consolidate. I would not be surprised to see us touch the moving averages in the $2,250 and $2,300 range. I imagine the market will sniff out where that predicted one rate cut will appear. And until then, I'm going to go get a sandwich and touch some grass. Which is to say, no big movements when it comes to planning. If we run again, well, I've got my position. If we fall below the averages, I'll gladly fill my bags around 2,000. The same applies to silver. We're digesting a massive move, and once again, we're hitting a wall of selling. I know I sold some recently to bring my personal gold to silver ratio back into alignment. I put the proceeds into some pre-33 gold that I'm really excited to get in hand. Oh, and for the record, my ratio is 20-1. You have to go with the metal that brought you to the show. And for me, that is gold. Our recent moves were powerful enough to leave the averages well behind spot. Like with gold, I expect us to chop here and float back to the average. For me, that is $28 to $29. If we break that, I think 25 is the next stop. I think the bias is towards higher though. And that is probably good for today. It is frustrating as hell, just chopping around, but it's also pretty healthy. So, what is your take on this market setup? Let me know in the comments. And finally, if you find value in these precious metals market updates, please give this video a like and subscribe. Maybe share it with a fellow stacker. I appreciate it. Until next time, cheers.